you explain, but how did you feel getting that shout out? Like what did that moment mean for you?
Let me tell you something. That shout out, that was huge, because what happens is, and James, you know, that's why I made a big deal. I want to make a real big deal about what you had did. The thing about it is, so often as a trainer, you don't really get the credibility that you deserve. And you have to be careful saying that, because you don't want to seem like some guy who the kid owes everything to. But there's so many kids in this community in Northeast Ohio, and James will tell you, they owe their collegiate experience, sometimes their collegiate opportunity. Beyond that, just phone calls of me talking a kid down from different circumstances. Because when you're training athletes, you're not just training the athlete, you're training the soul of that athlete. And there's so much more that comes with that. You know, that the demons that he faced to being where he or she is. You have to understand, when I first trained Denzel, I've been training Denzel since 8th grade. A lot of people don't know that. I first met Denzel. Well, Denzel, I'm at church right now. I met Denzel with his parents here. Denzel don't go to our church. And so I worked with his brother first and helped him get in college. I got his brother a scholarship. Like, we don't just train these kids up, the football players. We go out and go get offers for these boys, whether it's full packages or not. So then Denzel's mom was like, Nicole was like, do this for Denzel. So we did it for Denzel. Denzel owes all of Ohio State to us. Denzel owes defensive back to his natural ability. Don't get me wrong, but he was a receiver, and he didn't like DB. I had to make him understand, and thank God the late Paul Ward saw me through that, because sometimes kids want to be offensive players and not defensive players, because defensive back can be humbling. So, with that being said, to get that shout out after all the stuff that we done, because his first year of the NFL, he trained with me. That second year, he didn't train with me, and I was offended, because I'm like, we was all pro first year in. Like, let's keep this thing going. But I have to understand that when you're from here and everybody has access to you, that could be a little tiring too. So when he comes back to train this year, that was really the first time that Denzel shouted out raw talent. His mama always shouted out, but Denzel, he's a quiet dude, and he just do what he do. But when we went through some trials and tribulations this year, he had some things that had happened that I had a lot to work with this year with him. I had a lot to work with because he had some little injuries. So we had to work. And so I think he really enjoyed it so much of him rehabbing and rebuilding and getting back to where he was. He was proud, because Denzel don't do that. And so to hear him do that on that stage, you understand, Deion Sanders is my idol. I met Deion Sanders twice. And both times I get mentioned to Deion Sanders through the best defensive backs I've ever had come through raw talent. That was Duran Grant from Ohio State, you know what I'm saying? And then going to be now this time with Denzel Ward. So to be a part of that conversation with those greats is just huge. It was just huge. Yeah. And it's an experience that a lot of trainers, a lot of your rec guys, that the coach, the rec coach, they don't get that. Because guys forget, as a culture, we have not done a good job installing the culture of understanding to give back. When you make it, you come back, you shout out, you come back and help the kids that was in your same position. And that's what raw talent has always really been about, but I haven't preached that. So when you don't preach that and install that, you can't be so upset, my dad said, when the kids don't think the way you think. That's your job now as a trainer. There's a new level of training that you got to look at installing, because at the end of the day, when you're training athletes, you're really making them a better person. Whether that's through athletics, but the sport is just a tool. But you're supposed to, this is for me, I'm a child of God. So for me, this is a ministry. And even though it's not a ministry, it is a ministry. And I have an obligation. I don't have an obligation to force church Jesus Christ on anybody. I have an obligation to be an example and to be the best example so they can be the best image of who they need to be. Like we as Christians, we say that we are of his image. And so they are of my image. And I think when they don't do well, like LaTuan Anderson, when things happen, I take it personal, because that's the way you should take it, because you're trying to mold that young man or young lady into who they really want to be, their best version of themselves. So to get that shout out, man, was huge. It was huge,
Yeah.
and it's overdue.
Yeah.
Overdue.
And I also got to add this, because you mentioned Dion and being your idol. It made me think about something that happened just recently. I'm sure you probably know about it. You got both of you guys probably know about it. But he recently took the head
Coaching
at Jackson State, which was interesting because I think he's probably gotten a fair share of praise and ridicule over that. I'm
Yes,
kind of curious of you guys' reaction on the new hire there.
It's fair. So let me explain that. That question is, man, you asking some powerful questions, man. So
Not bad, bro. That's what we're here for.
So check this out. So I'm gonna drop some knowledge on you all. So, James, you went to a historical Black college. And so right now, for the recruiting world, historical Black colleges are not fair. They're not fair. Because you gotta think about it. These historical Black colleges, they don't have so much funding, right? And so that funding means recruiting money. Now, the football games and basketball games, they're always great turnouts because that's a show. But it has little to do about the sport. But more so, the sport provides a stage of an opportunity for the bands, the cheerleaders, the congregating of just the student body, all having a good old time in a historical Black college fashion, right? And I've learned that. I was jealous when I took these kids